back in 1936, that was the first television broadcast, was the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
In 2024, we want to have this herald in and revolutionize the introduction of physically interactive television.
Hmm.
So what they're going to do on August 10th, they're going to have a 10K for folks who can't complete a full marathon, but they're also going to have the Marathon Portus,
Hmm.
allowing people from around the world to take part in this event. They're going to have, I think, about 50,000 people at the Champs-Élysées on the actual Olympic course for Paris
Hmm.
2024. They're going to actually run on the Olympic course, but in conjunction with that live event, they want to have people from around the world simultaneously experiencing the same thing
Hmm.
on their treadmills at home, which is
Wow.
incredibly neat. It's
Hmm.
really, really exciting. And this
Hey, listeners, welcome to the next episode of Tech in 26.2 Pod. I'm very excited to bring you the next speaker, Gary McNamee, founder and CEO of Outside Interactive, based in Hopkinton, Mass, just a stone's throw away from Boston Marathon start line. Outside Interactive has a product called Simulator, which actually simulates the race course into your living rooms, either as on a treadmill or a smart device. And it can be a great option if you're running a virtual race or you are training for an upcoming race in harsh weather conditions where you don't want to go outside but stay indoors and train. Gary shares a fascinating story of how he built the first version of Simulator back in 10 years back when he started the company, and the vision he has for Simulator or Outside Interactive going forward. I'm sure you'll enjoy the excitement and enthusiasm he has for this product. If you do, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Thanks for listening. Welcome, Gary, to the Tech in 26.2 Pod. Really excited to have you here.
I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Welcome. So we can quickly start with a quick introduction that based on what I understand your background. So Gary is the co-founder and CEO of in Boston or Hopkinton, which is the start line of Boston Marathon, called Outside Interactive. He started the company in 2011, but you are a serial entrepreneur itself, and you are also ran Boston probably a couple of times. And what did I miss in this introduction? You want to add anything, Gary?
Well, actually, I'm the founder. It probably would have been nice to have a co-founder.
Okay.
Misery loves company. Startups can be an interesting challenge, but yeah, no, I am out in Hopkinton. My office is literally 113 steps from the start line of the Boston Marathon on
Mhm.
Hayden Row. And yes, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm from Boston. I grew up in West Roxbury. And I've been an avid runner and a very big fan of the sport and different endurance events, including the Boston Marathon, pretty much all my life.
Mhm.
So I I actually developed this idea of training for Boston many years ago, back in 2010. Was a particularly bad day. It was, I think, a January day, and it was 3 feet of snow outside, and I was stuck inside on the treadmill doing a 20-mile run.
Uh-huh.
Doing a 20-miler is hard enough. Trying to do it on the treadmill is
Really
significant.
tough. Yeah,
So
yeah.
somewhere around mile 12 or so, staring at the wall, the idea had come to me. I mean, the course is right up the street. Perhaps I can, maybe go out and film the course, and I can then watch it while I'm running on my treadmill.
Mhm.
Idea seemed simple enough. So I went out on the course. I stuck my head out the sunroof. My wife drove. I hit record on the camera, and it came out terrible. But I knew that there was a kernel of potential here. There was possibilities. And so, you know, even though this was back in 2010, which was, my gosh, 14 years ago,
Mhm.
a lot of the things that I mentioned, or I may mention during our discussion here, you know, I can say something, but it might have taken 2 years in order to perfect it. So we
Right.
have the benefit of hindsight now and looking back, but it was a lot of trial and error, tremendous amount of trial and error. and trying to just figure out how it all would work and tie together. So originally I had come up with the idea of pre-paced videos.
I see.
Um, this was back when they had DVDs and before everything was, digital and streaming. So what I did is I actually went out and I filmed a few courses, and I filmed them 4 times and edited them to predetermined paces, say
Mhm.
8 minutes a mile, 10 minutes a mile, 12 minutes a mile, 14 minutes a mile. So you would plug the DVD in and you would hit play, or you could pick what mile you wanted to start on. And you were the slave and the DVD was the master. And what I mean by that is it was up to you to keep up.
Right.
So, if the video is running, if you selected the 10-minute per mile pace, people will actually ask me, how did you get the video to speed up and slow down on the, I didn't, just recorded and edited different ways. But
I see.
that's a dirty little secret we never told anybody. But in any
Yeah.
event, yeah, no. So it would be up to you to keep up, and you could sit on your couch and watch it. So no sooner did I get that done and figured out. And by the way, the process of actually getting the smoothness of everything and having it, not look like it was all over the place, that took a lot of time and everything as
Yeah.
well. Managed to figure it all out, to cut to the chase. And then enjoying that, it had occurred to me, and friends had also said, it would be really cool if this could literally adjust to your pace as you were running. And that required software. So I did have a
Mhm.
software background. I've had a few other companies and did the original programming for a Windows version. And no sooner did
okay.
I get that done and working, which was great. But then everybody said, this has to be an app. And naturally they were right.
Yeah.
So, more, and at that point, the ship had sailed. I mean, I just, my coding skills were they were good enough. As an entrepreneur, you get to be good enough at everything, but not great at anything.
Right.
So I ended up farming out. We, farmed out the development for that. I had a few friends who helped on that, and came up with the Windows version, and then we came up with an iPad version and an Android version, and it was really cool. And then the video would speed up and slow down, and you would wear a foot pod on your shoe, which would send a Bluetooth signal to your iPad, which would adjust the video. So it was pretty neat. And then somebody else had come up with the idea, boy, wouldn't it be really cool if the incline could adjust as you're running up Heartbreak Hill, for example. So nobody's ever happy or satisfied with what I did. It was always the next thing. But they were right. I mean, you wanted it to be able to do that automatically. And so, that was another area. But then, the problem with that was, how do you communicate with the actual equipment, the treadmill or the spin bike or whatever? But around 2018 or so, smart treadmills were being introduced, 2017, 2018, which were Bluetooth capable. And that was a very big breakthrough, because it allowed us with our app to actually communicate directly with the equipment, on the iPad or what have you. So you would take your iPad, put it on the console, you'd start running, the video would literally adjust to your pace. But then, and the pace, by the way, when the treadmills got smarter, you didn't need the foot pod anymore. The treadmill was the foot pod. So your pace on the treadmill would transmit to the iPad, which would adjust the video. But then as you approached Heartbreak Hill or other terrain in the video, the app would send a signal down to the treadmill to adjust the incline accordingly. So you really got a true simulation. It was really neat. Then, once that was done and perfected, which, by the way, and I'm saying this in 60 seconds, but it was probably 3 years to get it all figured out.
I would imagine, yeah.
Oh, it was terribly difficult to figure it out, and have it look not, like Charlie Chaplin or something like that. It needed to be smooth. So within our app, we created what we call a dynamic wave frame controller, which I have 3 patents, or had 3 patents on that. And that would basically allow the video to flow. So as you sped up or slowed down, it wouldn't stutter if you were going too slow, or look choppy if you were going too fast. It actually flowed. Very, very cool. And so once we figured that out, then we're filming different locations, scenic locations, popular routes. Charles River in Boston is a great route. A lot of people who went to school here are familiar with it. Central Park in New York was another great one, of the Washington Mall in DC. But then Then a good friend of mine, Dave McGilvery, is a race director for the Boston Marathon, had said, you know, that you should do this with some race courses, because if you did it with race courses, it would be a great way for runners to be able to train before the race. And I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So went up and I filmed two courses, the Joan Benoit Samuelson's TD Beach to Beacon 10K up in Maine, and then the ASICS Falmouth Road Race down on Cape Cod, and filmed those. And it was really good. I mean, we got to see the courses and everything, but it wasn't the exact same as race day. So I had
Right.
gone back to Dave and I said, Dave, you know, it's pretty good. It would do the job for training, but it would be really neat if it was done on race day. I don't know how we can do that. And Dave said, well, boy, I happen to know the race director, which was Dave.
Yeah.
So, you know, as luck would have it, we were able to go out there on race day and film the course. And I had mentioned about filming and smoothness earlier, coming back full circle on that. The way that I had filmed at the time was I actually bought this rig called a Steadicam. Okay, that's this rig that you wear on your body. By the way, this is like a dozen years ago before. I mean, now these GoPros are amazing. I mean, they can, you know, you can do whatever you want and they're nice and smooth, but this was before all of that. So I would film with a Steadicam, which was this rig that I'd wear on my body with this camera. And 4K was a big breakthrough, by the way, back then too. These cameras, I think I had a red one, which was like $22,000 or something crazy. Now a GoPro. In any event, so I was the problem with the Steadicam was the thing weighs about 25 pounds, and how do you go at a steady state, you know, with this big rig? So I'm like, well, I know a Segway. So I got a Segway, and no sooner did I do that than I realized, well, I can't steer the Segway and operate the camera at the same time. So I actually invented a piece to allow me to steer the Segway with my knees so that I could operate the camera. It was literally problem solution. Again, it's an entrepreneurial thing or a problem thing, you know, inventor thing, whatever you want to call it. You know, and encounter a problem, and well, how do we solve it? And you know, now this hands-free piece that I created for the Segway, you know, a friend said, well, you should sell that. I'm like, no, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. It's if you're doing it right, it's very dangerous. But we managed to figure it all out. And, you know, fast forward to today, fortunately, all you need now is a baby stroller and a selfie stick and a GoPro, you know, for the same thing. But technology is amazing. It's amazing how fast things have iterated. So, so yeah, where we are now at this point is able to create different race courses on race day in partnership with these races. Now, when I had approached a lot of them back in the day, you know, 2013, 2014, whatever, they were intrigued, you know, and they said, this is pretty interesting. And, you know, and then, you know, a couple of them said, well, we have a virtual race, you know, and I said, well, this isn't that, you know, I mean, the virtual races, you know, you run around your neighborhood and you collect your medal when you're done, but there's no real shared experience with the masses. I mean, you know, you're running your high school track. What does that have to do with somebody who's running up the side of a mountain? You know, I mean, it's they're running 10Ks, but they're completely unrelated. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to bring the actual course, bring the race to the runner. So in any event, while the races were intrigued, they really didn't know if there was a real value add opportunity there. And then came COVID. And my phone started ringing off the hook, as you would imagine. And the problem, unfortunately, was that, you know, we need to do this on race day in order to capture the actual experience. And because every race in the world was canceled, you know, it kind of had me saying, well, boy, had you contacted me 3 years ago, then, you know, now we would be able to, you know, make this all work and everything. And, you know, it was what it was. So anyway, where we are now post-COVID is the idea and the opportunity is, you know, it's in the minds of all the race directors now. They can understand it, they can see it. But that's not the complete solution. This requires equipment, you know, whether it's a treadmill or a spin bike or a rowing machine, you know, it requires that in order to be able to work completely. So I reached out to dozens of different cardio equipment manufacturers. And again, the same thing. While the race directors now were on board, the equipment manufacturers, the product managers, like, well, you know, it seems like a good idea, but and I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do here? So here we are at this point, And what's very exciting now is that the Paris Olympics
Mhm.
in less than 2 months on August 10th are going to be having their marathon Portus in 10K. So they're
Mhm.
actually going to be having a marathon, and I believe they want to go for a Guinness Book of World Records. They want to have over 1 million people take part in this event. It's
I
going to be
see.
the first mass participation event of the modern Olympics.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, I mean, it's going to basically herald in the introduction of physically interactive television. Now,
Right.
back in 1936, that was the first television broadcast, was the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
In 2024, we want to have this herald in and revolutionize the introduction of physically interactive television.
Mhm.
So what they're going to do on August 10th, they're going to have a 10K for folks who can't complete a full marathon, but they're also going to have the marathon Portus,
Mhm.
allowing people from around the world to take part in this event. They're going to have, I think, about 50,000 people at the Champs-Élysées on the actual Olympic course for Paris
Mhm.
2024. They're going to actually run on the Olympic course, but in conjunction with that live event, they want to have people from around the world simultaneously experiencing the same thing
Mhm.
on their treadmills at home, which is
Wow.
incredibly neat. It's
Mhm.
really, really exciting. And this isn't, again, it's not a virtual, I don't know if they have a virtual option, but what we're trying to do here is we want to bring the streets of Paris, this beautiful city, right into your
Right.
living room. And
Right.
it's something where you actually can be running by and seeing these landmarks and feeling the hills. It would give people an opportunity to know what the Olympic marathoners are going to be experiencing as well.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
it's it's, it's very exciting times.
No, that's good to know. And I really appreciate you actually covering, founding Outside Interactive, the challenges you faced and how you overcome those challenges one after another with solutions as an entrepreneur would do, and also bringing to the current state and what's look forward to. Now, if you take a step back, I want to emphasize one of the couple of the things that you mentioned with the current state is that the product name is called the Virtual Runner. It's my
Yes.
understanding.
Yes.
And if I am to paint the picture for our audience, right, which is a lot of runners, right? I know I'm in Boston. I ran Boston in 2018, the worst years to run.
Oh yeah.
And I
Horrible.
I I train at the Heartbreak Hill, the running company. So I used to
Okay.
go in Newton and run the loop. So it was kind of the part of the loop I trained all the time.
Right.
But I know the pain people go through, especially in Boston in winter, because some of the weekends, even if you want to, you don't want to take the risk. Like it's 2 foot of snow, 3 feet of snow. It's -10 below freezing. It's like can be not ideal or optimal in any sense to run.
Right. Sure.
And at the same time, if you want to run indoors, as you mentioned, after 12 miles, you hit the wall.
Yeah.
So you have that challenge. And most of the runners I know, not a big fan of running indoors.
Right.
You are solving actually both the problems with this. You are simulating a course and indoors where you can experience actual race course on an indoor environment. You take away all the like folks I know who are training for fall runs now are struggling to train in this hot weather, right?
Right.
Especially in
Right. The other
southern
side.
states.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So you're solving that both into this one solution where, hey, I can be indoor in whatever environment, ideal environment, no hot or cold, and I can set it up. And I can simulate the course in front of me and run the course. And I'm actually running the actual course that I'm going
Right.
to race on the race day, which is a win-win in a lot of ways for the runners and take away all those variables of extreme weathers that people may have to go through. Which I think is a very fascinating idea. And then the challenges you went through to get to this state today, which is really fascinating. I'm just curious to see how you have seen the response from the runner community as such on the virtual running product.
Well, it's interesting because back when I started the company, I actually started in 2010, but I spent about a year doing research.
Mhm.
I had sold my second company, and I was a little burnt out. I had been working at my second company for 15 years, which was online bill payments, and
Mhm.
completely unrelated. But I was pretty burnt out at that point. And actually, what I ended up doing is I actually coached high school track and cross country
Oh, you
for
did.
about
Okay.
4.5 years.
Okay.
I've always been a runner. I've in one capacity or another. I'm more of a relegated to a jogger these days, but in any event, I love the sport. And I, was able to, I had the good fortune of being able to work with a number of different high school kids at Stoughton High School. I was assistant coach there for a long time. And when I came up with the idea, actually, all the kids were, "Oh, coach, you have to do this. You have to do this. It's a great idea." So, I originally named the product Virtual Runner, and my word was hijacked. Because, everything is virtual now. And so but back then it wasn't, virtual wasn't really that well-known a term in 2010. And so I'm like, I'll call it Virtual Runner. And so then along come the virtual races, and it just kind of really confused issues. So what we've created, we call it a simulation,
Okay.
So if you see Top Golf, which is a great product in the golfing world, that's a simulation. You can actually experience different, PGA courses and the such. Well, this is the exact same concept, but it's not it's not as expensive. Frankly, you don't have to go to an outside location. This is the idea, is to bring this right to your treadmill, and it'll work with any treadmill, which is another very cool thing now in various capacities. But the newer treadmills that are Bluetooth capable, they're the most interactive and the most immersive and the such. So where we are, like I said, where we are at this stage of the game is I was early. I mean, it's just, that's probably the first thing I should mention, is when I started this, I figured, I told my wife it'll probably be 2 or 3 years before it gets traction. And in my mind, I'm thinking probably more like 3 or 4 years. Well, here we are 14 years later.
Right.
And the thing is you don't make that kind of a commitment and an investment and the such unless you have a pretty, certain conviction that this is going to happen. I've always been very, very fortunate that I've had a very good crystal ball. So, but it's a dual edge. It's a two-sided coin here, where I can see what's around the curve. What I can't see is how long the curve is.
I see.
So in this instance, here we are 14 years later, and now we have the Paris Olympics that they're going to be adopting this and offering this to the world. And I am very hopeful, confident, cautiously optimistic that this is going to be the tipping point. And here's the reason why. One of my main driving forces behind doing this and working on this for so long, I come back to Dave McGillivray, from the Boston Marathon, and he's pretty much a legend in the running
Absolutely community. Yep.
Well, Dave was one of the ones who, he may not have invented it, but he certainly brought it out to the fore of combining charity with endurance events. Back in 1978, Dave ran across the country to raise money for the Jimmy Fund. And that really, I believe, is what launched the idea of charity events tied to endurance events.
Okay.
And, Dave has been a very, very big proponent. And I would say, my gosh, 95% of all the races out there, if they're not a race that was created for a charity, whether it's cancer or what have you, there's certainly charity components in every race out there.
Absolutely.
That allow you to be part of an event to raise funds. Well, look at what we're doing. I mean, let me present it another way. How many people attend the Super Bowl every year? 70,000?
Yep.
How many people are at home watching it on television?
Millions.
123 million?
Yeah.
There's our audience. Right. So you've got 70,000 people that are actually at the Super Bowl, but there's 123 million that are at home. Well, think of it this way. Let me put it another way. 840,000 people applied to be part of the London Marathon in 2025.
I was one of them. Yes, sure.
Did you make it in?
No, I did not.
50,000 made it in. So that means that 790,000 people, they're kind of out of luck. Now, would you rather be on the 50-yard line for the Super Bowl versus home watching it on television? Of course you would. But either it sells out, it's too expensive, or it's just not practical. So what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to allow people from around the world to be part of these endurance events whether it's a marathon right down to your local turkey trot 5K on Thanksgiving. I mean,
Hmm.
what if you're in the military and you're deployed and you're homesick?
Right.
Well, here's an
Right.
opportunity
Right.
to see all the landmarks and experience the sounds and the sights and and feel your course in your hometown turkey trot on Thanksgiving when you're half a world away.
Right.
This is literally physically interactive television. Now, I'm starting with endurance events because, frankly, there's a lot of money to be made.
Hmm.
And there's also an opportunity for charity events to raise funds in an entirely new way. This is a
Yes.
frictionless
Hmm.
offering. In other words, it's not a zero-sum game. For us to win, for the races to win,
Yeah. Yeah.
others don't have to lose.
Yeah.
Those 840,000 people, the 790,000 people that are out of luck, if we can provide this as a solution to them, naturally, not everyone wants to take advantage of it, but naturally there could be,
Yeah. Yeah.
or and the idea behind this is let them experience this, or maybe they want to dip their toe. I've always wanted to run that race, but I'm not entirely sure. Well, let me try the simulated event and see what that does.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
what does this do for the race director? Well, every race director looks at their event as the Mona Lisa.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All we're doing is we're giving them a palette and a brush,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we're giving them the platform. Okay.
Right.
So the goal behind what we're doing is, and I mentioned about the baby jogger and the GoPro. Well, you don't have to be Steven Spielberg to create this, but what we are doing is creating a way for these races to show off their race. I mean,
Right.
you can create this on race day. You can film your own course,
Yeah.
upload it to the platform, and then share it with the world. And by the way, you can have official paid remote participation. So somebody who's doing, running a 5K a 5K up north of Boston, and, somebody's in Los Angeles, they actually can experience this event. They can get their finisher's medal. They can be part of the official results,
Hmm.
and they have an opportunity to dip their toe before the live event the next time
Yeah.
around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, and this, by the way, endurance events is a great opportunity, but it just starts here. I mean,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
departments of tourism. Do I want to go to Sydney, Australia? Do I want to go to Milan next year? I don't know. Let's take a virtual walk, run, ride, or row through both. And
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
experience them and see. And by the way, it now becomes up to the race director to make that video production as good as it can,
Right.
because that's an opportunity to advertise your event for future live participation.
Yeah.
And while
Yeah.
we're on the topic of advertising, we also have in-video advertising capability as well. This
Oh,
is a
nice.
video.
Yeah. Right.
So as you summit Heartbreak Hill, congratulations, you did it. You're running along, 20% off your next pair of Adidas. Use this QR code.
Right.
So it's a non-invasive ad that's in the video as you're experiencing it. And by the way, when somebody's on a treadmill running, you've got 100% of their attention, because they're not
That's
looking to
true.
the left or their right. They're looking right at your logo.
Right.
So you can see there's tremendous potential here, not only for the race, but for the
Hmm.
charities. And by the way, all the vendors, the t-shirt manufacturers, the finishers medal companies. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
and we can even go one step further.
Hmm.
Health clubs. Okay, so
Right.
what's to limit this to being done in someone's living room? Well, we can also have an opportunity to bring this into health clubs, where health clubs now have an opportunity, and they would be able to receive a small portion of the entry fee as well. So it's a revenue generator for the health clubs as well. I mean,
Right.
it goes on and on and on, but it has to start somewhere. And that's kind of where we are at this point.
No, that is true, because I know a lot of races offer the virtual run options too, because that would be a good one, because they can add and in addition to the virtual run, they can add it that, hey, you can actually run on the simulated course when you're doing the virtual run. For example, I put my name for the lottery for the New York City virtual run that can happen
Right.
the same week of the New York City Marathon in the November 1st week. Now, I will run somewhere around here in Boston, right? It's nowhere close to actually experiencing what the
Right.
New York City Marathon would look like. But if New York City Marathon organizers, the race director offers the same to the virtual runners, the same, like, hey, if you're running indoors, you can simulate the race and you can experience as close as you are running the New York City Marathon course, which is a lot of value add for the runners because they are feel
Yeah.
like they're part of it and more connected versus they're running in their own town somewhere 26.2 miles. It would be a
Sure.
different experience altogether. Yeah,
Right.
I do totally see it. You mentioned a couple of times that you are, for the health clubs, the race directors, you talk about partnerships with the equipment companies, right? So if a runner is looking, I know there are tons of equipments available in the market. If someone wants to experience what the simulator does them for a race, like what kind of equipments you're looking at?
Well, it's very interesting that you say that. And one of the companies that I've been really trying to reach out to is Peloton.
Okay.
Um, Outside Interactive is trying to reach out to Peloton Interactive.
Okay.
I've said with Outside Interactive, I came up with the name because I thought it was all encompassing. I had originally was thinking about running related ideas and names, but then I'm like, well, why limit it to just running? Because this can also work for rowing. It'll work for spinning. It'll work for cycling, so there's other areas. So I'm like, well, outside seems more of an all encompassing name. So Outside Interactive it was. So incorporated that in 2011, like I said. But in any event, the idea of what we're trying to do here is to have a company that we can partner with, that we can focus with, that could be able to present this, a company with a name. The one thing about Outside Interactive and about me, I've been doing this for a very long time, but I bootstrapped the company.
Hmm.
I've got a great location. I got a great story here. I mean,
That is
I
true.
seriously, I mean, the whole idea came about. By the way, my commitment to this story and this idea and this company, happened literally at mile 21 of the Boston Marathon.
Oh, that
So,
did. Okay.
yeah, I mean, without getting too much, I was trying to break 3 hours at the race, and I got to mile 21. I just got to the top of Heartbreak Hill, and it wasn't looking good.
Yeah, yeah.
So generally around mile 21 is when all the negotiations with the higher power take place.
It does. Yeah.
I'll be a better person. I'll do this. I'll do this. I'll not do this. And for me, it was okay. Well, I'll commit to this company if I can reach my goal. And I
Mhm.
did. And so, at that point, I'm like, well, let's see what I can do about this. And about 6 months into it, I realized this is going to be really hard. And it was. But again, I think that the benefit and again, I come back to something greater than myself. The charity component of this is going to be very, very significant. But I look at, having a partner that we can, present this to everybody with, and Peloton Interactive. Peloton is the company that I think would be a fantastic partner for us in this endeavor. I hope that
But
they can see it as such as well. But
and if you look at today, there are some equipments that offers the simulation today, right? Or can be added.
yeah, yes,
Okay.
there's many. My Outside Interactive, there's another company in Paris actually called Kinomap that
Oh, okay.
does what I actually worked with them for a little bit over a year.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think they were as much focused on the racing component of it at that point. But one of the benefits that they do have is I look at them as like a Microsoft, where they work
Oh,
with
okay.
many different equipment manufacturers. Like
Mhm.
Microsoft works with many PC manufacturers, but my thought, my focus, my goal would be to work with Apple. And
Mm,
I basically look at being able to hone in and target that type of a solution, and in this space, in the fitness equipment space, Peloton is the Apple of the space,
right,
and
right,
so it would make sense to be able to work with them in this capacity. So
right. I'll switch the gear a little bit in terms of actually get a sense on your entrepreneurial journey, because I know you had two successful companies before you even conceptualize Outside Interactive.
yes.
I'm just curious to see how that experience of running two company and exiting that and then starting it paved the way for running this company 14 years. And you look like a kid in a candy store, right? I can see you that's so excited about the future of where Outside Interactive is going. I'm just curious, how do you keep it? Like, how does it shape you? Like, how excited you are about this your new baby that's Outside Interactive, a 14-year-old baby, as maybe probably in day one.
Well, three words: discipline, patience, and humility.
Okay.
With my second company, it's very good example, developed online bill pay in 1993.
Oh wow.
Now, I'm dating myself here. This was at the dawn of the internet. And when I had first developed this, um, everybody was just saying you're nuts. I mean, the internet is years and years away, if ever, to be able to do online commerce. And I mean, this is laughable now, but back then it wasn't. It was, people were looking at it as a, well, this too shall pass,
Right. Right.
as a fad.
Mhm.
And so, as a good example from the crystal ball standpoint is I realized, I said, I think this internet thing's going to have some legs. So I started to gobble up some domain names, and one of the better ones that I got was ach.com.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, in the payment space, ACH stands for Automated Clearinghouse, and when I started thinking about the domain names, I went to the obvious ones. Beer.com is a good example, but there were other people out there that had the same idea.
Uh-huh.
But when you got into an industry specific area like payments or financial services or whatever, they weren't taken. So ACH at that point, I actually had acquired it from a guy for a few $100s who had an air conditioning and heating company. So I mean,
Like,
we literally went up to a seedy divey bar in Lowell, Massachusetts, and did the deal. And wrote him a check, and he signed it over, and we registered it with NetSol Network Solutions, and for $35. And I sold it for six figures when I sold my company. I sold it.
oh wow.
I sold my company in 2007 to my employees,
Ah,
but I
okay.
kept the domain names and I sold those separately. But yeah, ach.com, positivepay.com, electronicpayments.com, and there were a few others in there. But again, it's a good example of maybe seeing ahead of the curve that others didn't.
hmm
And with the advocacy of electronic payments and the such, again, being very early on, it was literally establishing a beachhead, clawing, and then holding on and waiting for the world to catch up. Outside Interactive is the quintessential example of that,
I
of
see.
establishing a beachhead, holding on, and just waiting for the world to catch up. And the world is finally catching up. I mean, when
hmm
I started the company and Peloton came along a few years later, and I'm like, ooh, this is a good thing.
Right.
I saw
Right.
their meteoric rise. It was incredible.
hmm
And and kudos to the founder, John Foley. One of the things that he did that I could never do, he got rejected by over 400 venture capitalists. I mean, can you imagine the type of resolve that takes? I mean, I'm a persistent guy. I'm stubborn, and I've got patience and discipline, but I don't know that I could handle
400
400
rejections.
no's.
Yeah, yeah. You need to
So
be
he
built out
deserves
different
all the
material.
credit.
Yeah.
Yeah, he deserves tremendous credit for having the fortitude to be able to withstand that. And look what he created.
Right.
So in terms of where I am and what I've done, I knew that I was early when I had come up with this,
Oh,
but
okay.
I also knew, I also think I feel like I was put here to do this. I know
hmm
that sounds a little unusual, but I mean, think if I came up with this same idea and I lived in Billings, Montana. No offense to Billings, Montana, but it's not
Yeah.
known for its running prowess.
Right. Right. Right.
I mean, I grew up a runner. I mean, all the people who I idolized as a kid, I now am friendly with, which is a tremendous ancillary benefit from this company.
hmm
And so I just figured that, if I continue to work on this and perfect it and everything, at some stage of the game, various people are going to have their aha moments, and they're going to see the value of what we've created, what I've created. And it's starting to happen now. And the fact that the Paris Olympics are going to be utilizing this and offering this, I think this is going to give the world, give it the exposure that it's been lacking. We've been around for a while,
Right.
but
Right.
been very, very easy to miss, because I bootstrapped. So,
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
having an oasis in the desert is wonderful, but it's not so much if nobody knows you're there.
That is
So
true. So
so here.
how was the experience actually having your product used at Paris Olympics? It must be I don't know, the process you went through get to there. There are some aha moments, oh shit moments.
Well, actually, they're going to be incorporating Kino Maps
They are.
technology.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, yeah. I mean, again, when I was on board with them, I had nothing to do with the Paris. I knew some of the folks at the, in at the right levels, if you will, but this
Hmm.
is going to be incorporating Kino Maps technology, and kudos to them. I mean,
I
it's
see.
it's basically we're the only two games, around. And it probably also didn't hurt that it's the Paris Olympics and Kino Maps headquarters is in
In
Paris.
Paris.
Uh,
Okay. Okay.
that probably helps a little bit, but in any event, they have great technology as well. I wish them well. I think that they have a very, very bright future. I mean, well, I think we both do, frankly, because
Right.
this is where it's all headed. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it might not have been so obvious back in 2011, but it's getting a heck of a lot more obvious now. It's
Yeah.
similar to 1993 and talking about online bill pay and having everybody kind of tilt their head at me when I talk about internet
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
online commerce. Same concept.
Yeah. Now, as you talk to the ecosystem, especially in the running side, right, and endurance sports, you are talking to race directors, organizers. Obviously, they are connected to the athlete community, being an athlete yourself, a runner yourself. You're also talking to the ecosystem of the devices companies or the
Yes.
equipments company. And you also seen what pandemic does to this race in the last couple of years.
Right.
Like, where do you see it, Gary? How do you see the industry is heading? Let's start maybe talking about the virtual racing itself. Which direction it's heading? What is your understanding?
I mean, I look at this as this can be to television what television was to radio.
I see. I see.
And that's the approach. I mean, if you want to get futuristic about it, this is the holodeck version 1.0. I mean, it has to start somewhere,
Right.
and
Right.
and what I've created, naturally you're going to get developers, you're going to get people, videographers, you're going to get, equipment manufacturers. They're all going to come in and do a heck of a lot better job than I did, but I got them at the table. That's my
Right.
goal, is to get these people from these disparate, industries
Hmm.
at the same table and say, guys, look at this, very similar to what I had done with the software in my second company. I developed the software for, laser check printing starting out, and then working on electronic payments. And at some point I had licensed enough software that I could hire developers, and they took a look at my stuff saying, this is lousy. And I'm like, yeah, but it's good enough. I made enough money to hire you. Now go build it and make it better. And
Right.
that's
Right.
kind of what I'm doing here. I mean, I'm looking to be able to introduce the concept. I'm not trying to sell anybody. And there's a big difference between explaining and convincing.
Uh-huh.
And what I'm trying to do is explain. I'm not trying to convince. I mean, that's why, from the money standpoint and investors and everything, that was a kind of a non-starter for me, because first off, I knew I was early. Okay.
That's great. Yeah.
And you've got to remember, people want to say, well, what's your revenue? What's, this, and this. And I'm like, we're not there yet,
Right. Right.
but you know what? Now we are.
Hmm.
And now it's not, and the thing that's exciting for me is that, in less than 60 days, and this is why I'm trying to reach out to all of the people who I've spoken with over the years,
Hmm.
because I'm like, look, guys, on August 10th, a lot of stuff is going to go down. Now, you can start to scramble with everybody else on August 10th,
Right.
or you can start trying to be prepared for what's going to happen on August 10th, because things are going to change. It's going to be, I mean, it's going to, and it's not going to be all at once, because, it's a new concept and everything, but it's going to introduce this to a much greater audience than I've ever been able to do.
Right. Right.
So,
No, that's great. Now, it was great having you on the pod, Gary. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm excited which direction Outside Interactive is going. I'm sure August 10th will play a key role to educating, the whole ecosystem, like the runners, the organizers, who supports them as well in the community. So wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And thank you once again for being on the pod.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate your time.